Yeah.
Well, so you saw his work in the Constitutional Convention, and then he ran for election as governor in 1962, and he defeated John Swainson, who was the one-term Democratic governor following G. Menon Williams. You are back practicing law in the Foster Lindemer law firm, working your way up the masthead. We go through the incredible election of 1964, Lyndon B. Johnson versus Barry Goldwater. We come to 1966, George Romney's running for his third two-year term, and you are the Republican nominee for Attorney General against the incumbent Frank Kelly, then a comparatively youthful Frank Kelly, not the eternal general we know today. What do you remember about those years?
Yeah, Frank Kelly had run for re-election. I think Frank was first appointed to fill a vacancy.
In the fall of 61,
okay.
late of 61.
Okay. And then he ran and
was elected to a full term in 62, and then in 64. Those were two-year terms in those days.
Yeah.
So this was the first time the office under the new Constitution was a four-year term.
Yeah.
And you are tabbed as the Republican nominee to run against this guy.
Yeah. Well, I think they were filling a vacancy that nobody else wanted to fill.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I still remember a debate between you and Frank Kelly. I saw it. I was there.
Were you
in the
really?
old Jack Tar Hotel.
Yes, I remember that debate too. And my present wife, Jean, was at that debate.
Right, I'm sure she was.
Yeah.
A lot of people were there.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing. You stood out in that debate. You are a take-charge guy. You spoke in a very dramatic and forceful voice while the Attorney General was kind of mumbling. You know, maybe he felt, I just got to, do damage control here. I shouldn't have any problem with this guy. But you were really taking it to him.
I remember that occasion. I was importuned by my supporters to get more debates with Kelly after that. But
he didn't want any of it.
Didn't want to do it, and I understand that he was the incumbent, and
sure,
and that's generally good advice.
Well, he doesn't want to get in the ring with a mad dog any more than he can help it,
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, I haven't been called a mad dog before, but
no, you were very logical, but you were forceful. You were taking it to him. I still remember sitting next to Joyce Braithwaite, who at that time was the secretary to Ellie Peterson. She later became a very important figure in Bill Milliken's administration and ran his re-election campaign in 70. I remember her guffawing at your dramatic and forceful responses to Kelly, so I can see why he wouldn't have wanted to debate you again.
Well, anyway, we never had any more debates.
Well, so then after that, there was a vacancy on the University of Michigan Board of Regents, and Governor Romney, in his final year in office, appointed you to fill the vacancy.
Yeah, I was appointed in 1968, so that would have been Governor Romney.
Right.
And
his last year.
Yeah, and I ran in 68, and at that time, the election for regents pretty well went with the top of the ticket.
Right.
All of the educational posts would go either Republican or Democratic, depending upon how the top of the ticket did. And
it was a big year for the Democrats. Hubert Humphrey won Michigan easily over Richard Nixon, and so the Democrats won all those educational
posts. They did.
But then, the next spring, there was another vacancy.
Yes.
And
Bill Milliken said, "Would you like to go back on?" And I said, "Yes, I would." I greatly enjoyed that experience and got along. The Republicans and Democrats on the Board of Regents during the period of time that I served never made a decision based upon political affiliation. We concentrated on, as our judgment indicated, what was best for the university under the circumstances, and we got along very well. It was a rather apolitical atmosphere. And thoroughly enjoyable for me. I liked it.
In the spring of 1969, you are reappointed, this time by Governor Bill Milliken, to the University of Michigan Board of Regents. And that fall, in comes a guy named Bo Schembechler, coach of the football team, turns Michigan's gridiron fortunes around. They climax the season by beating Ohio State and go to the Rose Bowl. Do you take credit for that?
I'd love to take credit for that, but actually I can't take credit for that. I knew Fritz Chrysler, the athletic director in Michigan at that time, and but I did not know anything about the process of the selection of Bo.
Did you know Don Canham, who was
Yes.
the athletic director? And
Yes.
what was your impression of him?
I liked Don Canham very, very much. Don Canham was a good friend. My wife and I traveled with Don Canham and his wife on some University of Michigan trips, and actually Don Canham served as my chief financial guy for the race for election to the Supreme Court.
Oh, okay.
So we had a close relationship.
Okay, now the man who appointed you the second time to the Board of Regents of the University of Michigan was Bill Milliken, who had been lieutenant governor under George Romney for 6 years and became governor in his own right in 1969 and then was elected to his first four-year
Yes.
term in 1970. What is your memory of your first impression of Bill Milliken when you got to know him, maybe back in the early 60s or mid-60s, and Bill and Helen Milliken? What was your relationship?
I had known Bill Milliken for several years before that, Bill. And he is a dear friend. He made great moves for me in my life, and I just think.
Was he the Grand Traverse County Republican chairman maybe when you were state chairman?
I think that
he was active in Republican politics up there. Yeah.
I knew him at that time. I knew him when I was state chairman.
Another person who was a state chairman but of the opposite party in the mid-60s was the very colorful Zoltan Ferenczi.
Yes.
Now, did you
Zorro.
know? Zorro, that's right.
Sure.
Revolting Zoltan, some people call it. What was your impression of Zoltan Ferenczi?
Oh, Zoltan and I had a good relationship. Zoltan was somebody with whom a conversation had to be composed 90% of jokes. That was not true with a lot of the other people, but we kidded around a great deal, and I liked him, and we got along fine.
1969-75, you're on the University of Michigan Board of Regents. You love it, but then all of a sudden there's a vacancy on the Supreme Court, and Governor Milliken plucks you off that Board of Regents and makes you a Supreme Court justice. And that is because of the death of Thomas M. Cavanaugh, so-called Carson City Tom Cavanaugh, because there were two Thomas Cavanaughs on the court. All of a sudden you find yourself on the Supreme Court. I'm interested in what your impressions of the court were at that time, your experience on it, and in particular, you'd never been a judge before.
And that was one of the things that opponents to my selection pointed out, that I had not been a judge before. But I had been active in the court system. I tried cases. I had appearances in the Supreme Court and before the courts of appeals, and of course had been in trial courts with great frequency.